All right, and we are live. Good evening, audience. My name is LaSharte Scott. I am the CEO and president of Scott Center for Observation, Treatment, and Transition. Our mission is to continue to build the community in the face of health inequities impacting communities of color by bridging the educational awareness, policy, and outreach gaps between the community and healthcare professionals. We aim to eliminate preventable maternal health risks and newborn fatalities, and assist individuals and families transitioning from pediatric to adult care in sickle cell disease and treatment, while focusing on their mental health. Today, we are partnering with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Xi Zeta chapter for Good Health Wins, where we will highlight, mental health awareness to raise awareness on the importance of addressing loss and grief, the stigmas and barriers in the minority communities, and the importance of COVID and flu vaccination. So we're going to encompass a lot today, you guys. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce my panel today. We have Brielle Bow, who is a mother of 3 children, her 10-year-old son, her 6-year-old daughter, and a daughter who would have been 12 years old, that she lost at 9 months due to complications of sickle cell disease. She works in accounting for a car dealership and a real estate um, development firm. So thank you for joining us, Brielle.
Hi.
Then I have Juanita McClain, long friend. She is a warrior, a mother, an author, an advocate, an educator. She became the founder of the Sickle Cell Warriors of Buffalo Incorporated in July of 2022. She prides herself on being a good role model for sickle cell warriors, especially youth, because they are the reason that this fight for awareness and education and better treatment is a top priority for her organization. Thank you, Juanita, for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And last but certainly not least, my soror, Ryan Johnson, is a current director of counseling at Owens Community College. She owns and operates a private practice providing mental health services in Toledo, Ohio. Once again, she is a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Xi Zeta chapter. She volunteers in various ways, donate time and resources to eradicate barriers to mental wellness in her community. She's pursuing her doctoral degree at the University of Toledo in counselor education and supervision program, and continues to strive to erase the stigma around mental health. So once again, we are here today. Thank you for joining me, ladies. We are going to have a really good discussion tonight. Um, those that are tuning in, you are able to ask questions in the chat or comments. We are live streaming on multiple platforms, so I will be keeping an eye on that chat box. So you are able to go ahead and put some questions in the chat if you have any. So I want to start this conversation. We talk about mental health, just being aware of our mental health. Knowing that, and this question is directed towards Juanita and Bria, knowing where you were in your situations, rather being living with sickle cell and losing a child to complications of sickle cell, how are you today? How did you find peace with your situation? So either one of you can go first.
I'm kind of long-winded, so I don't know if you guys want me to go first.
I can go first. If you want me to go, I can.
Okay.
I think that where I was then, I don't think that mentally I was prepared for one to have a child with sickle cell. I've known my whole life that I've had trait, but I didn't really have a lot of information on what that meant when I began to bear children. I think that once I found out she had sickle cell, I also was still not mentally prepared for the job that I was going to have to do for whatever amount of time I did have her. And then I think that loss, it it definitely took years of just working on my mental health, talking to people, talking about it for me to get to a place where now I feel like I'm I'm still healing. I'm always going to heal from being a healing process from that. Losing a child is hard, but I feel like I'm finally in a place where like I'm super comfortable talking about it. I have questions that I ask just about sickle cell period, or just getting to know as much information as possible, because I do have two children that carry trait, and it's important for me to have them as way more prepared than I was for any type of situation like that.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that after Juanita tells me where she is with her piece with sickle cell, or it. Do you have?
Okay. So, first of all, I just want to say, sorry for your loss, Brielle.
Okay, thank you.
I know the difficulties of losing a child because I have so as well. But where I am at, I can say that I'm in a really, really good space. Um, Sickle cell doesn't affect me mentally as it used to. I feel like I have grown so much over the years living with sickle cell. Just as a child living with it, it's more difficult because you don't know what it is that you're facing. You don't know what it is that you're like actually going through. You're just trying to figure it out, and it's so hard as a youth, just living with sickle cell because you just go through so many struggles and you're always in a hospital and it just seems like it's never ending. So, just being able to grow past that stage and be able to become a mother, something I never thought I would do. I've had 4 children, 3 living, and all boys. So I'm just blessed and I feel really, really mentally good these days, and more than I used to be because I know mental health has been a real challenge for me living with sickle cell. And I'm just talking about, when it comes to the thoughts of suicide and the thoughts of not wanting to do it anymore and the thoughts of, you feeling alone and nobody understands your situation. I'm really I feel like I'm past all of that, and so I'm just really thankful for the headspace that I'm in today. So thank you.
So no problem. So Ryan, maybe you can help. I know being in this field, you probably hear a lot of stories where people just say they want to give up because of the struggles that they are enduring, or they're tired of managing. You know,
Mhm.
but how do we correlate the two between the separation, loss, and grief? How do we, hearing Brielle's a little bit of Brielle's story, and hearing that Juanita's constantly battling with or excuse me, surviving with sickle cell. How do we kind of put these connections together?
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to extend condolences and to wish you both continued peace and healing with your loss. And I think it's what we're speaking about is systemic. We can't talk, uh, mental health wellness without having mind for this is not something that's spoken about among our community. We hear phrases like buck up, put your big girl pants on, be strong, like
Mhm.
that. That term, I'm trying to do away with that, be strong. How about be resilient, right? And so when we talk about wanting to give up and wanting to step away from it all, what we're losing is hope. What people are losing is the hope that
Mhm.
things will get better, the hope that things could be better. Both of these women spoke about where they were, and it's beautiful to hear where they are. And I'd like to think that what got them to where they are is that hope.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
So okay, so where are you now? Now that we kind of, I know you said that you, Brielle, feel more comfortable speaking about your situation or just your experience as a whole. I know as a first time mom, that is not what you envision at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
Um, what was your and I ask this because it's something I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. When you found out that your child was even diagnosed with sickle cell disease, what where did your mind go?
So for one, I really, like I said, I did not really know what it was. I'm not gonna act like I really knew anything about it. I had really no idea, no, my mom didn't really give me any information about what sickle cell really was. So it was like, okay, well, what is it? So that was like my first question. What is it? What does this mean? What am I gonna have to do? It was just like my mind was racing. So it was like I immediately began to like look up stuff, ask questions. But I think that the way I was told, I got the letter in the mail like you normally do, but then I was going to a normal pediatrician and he had no idea what he was talking about. He made it seem like as if, oh, the test is probably wrong. You don't even, we're not going to even really talk about it because there's nothing to really discuss. And then it was like, once I actually got the call from our sickle cell liaison here in Detroit, that she basically was like, no, we only do the repeat test just to basically confirm what we already know. This is real, and you need to basically get up to speed on what you're dealing with here. And at the time, I was just confused too because I asked her father at the time, "Hi, do you have do you have trait?" Oh, him and his mom, no, we don't have it. So it was like also dealing with having to get him retested as well because it was basically like, okay, either he has to have it, it needs to be retested because the child definitely does have it. So I just feel like my mind went a million places. I was only 19. I had no idea what I was doing. This is, like you said, it was my first baby, and I was devastated, honestly, because for me, it was just like the first thing the doctor said was like, oh, people don't live that long. So it was like that realization, like immediately for me, was like, okay, well, how long do I have with my baby? And I remember like asking my mom, like, well, how long do I have with my baby? And she was just like, well, T-Boz has it. And that's kind of like how I started like getting information. She still doesn't, like, with her being having trait, she didn't know anything really about disease. She's uneducated. So I just was lost because I felt like I didn't have any information on what I was about to be dealing with in the next, however long that I was going to have my daughter.
Yeah, yeah. And Juanita, so you are on the other side, I feel. Yes, you are a warrior, but I think so. Hearing Brielle say that the doctor told her that she only had a certain amount of time with her child, right? You you've been living with sickle cell, and I'm pretty sure doctors probably told you that you shouldn't have kids because of sickle cell.
It's funny because doctors tell they well I feel like they used to. I don't know if that how much they do it now, but they used to always tell warriors, because I know plenty of people that they've told this, that we wouldn't probably live to see 18 or 19, and we wouldn't be able to have kids, and they used to always say what we would not be able to do. So you get this thought in your head when you're younger, oh, I can't do any of these things because they said I couldn't. And but then when you get older and you start seeing that you actually could do these things, it really, it's just like, it's a mind thing, it's a choice thing, and it's about growth and just knowing that you can survive it, and just that educational piece is the most important part of it, because if you don't know what it is you're going through, it's going to be even harder to get through it you know so I feel like that's what helped me a lot get through living with sickle cell, just learning the ins and out about sickle cell, and how can I help myself be better, because nobody else can really help you. you
Yeah,
know you really have to help yourself.
I feel, and you guys can correct me. From what I've heard on this particular talk so far, we speak of education, but our
Mhm.
community is so uninformed because and when I say we are not, or we hadn't done a lot of outreach. I'm from Detroit too. And I said this on a different call. They were not involved in the schools as they should have been. When you have over 40% of the population impacted by sickle cell the awareness should be there. We should be in schools. We should be at the recreation centers. We should be anywhere people are to educate and inform. Now, I don't want to hear from me. They're like, "Oh, I don't have sickle cell trait. I don't know," but I'm like, "But you may have a friend. 1 out of 13 of your friends will have sickle cell trait." I say all that to say, you might not have been, you're taking the next steps to do so. It may not, and it's never too late to learn information. It's never too late. So now you can inform another person. I always say, if you impact one life a day by giving them the information, you've done your job. Because then that person can take that information and pass it to the next person. So we just really have to get in this habit of spreading valid. I'm real big on valid information, but where they can get the resources from, so that people do feel the way that you did, Brielle, or people do not have this notion that they can't have children as sickle cell warriors and things of that sort. It's so much. This society has changed so much. Science has changed a lot within the last 30 years. We're talking about drug therapies are out. There's just a lot of different ways. People are taking different holistic approaches, because it's not a one side. It's not a one fix all thing. For each sickle cell patient, everybody is different. So when we talk about the mental health aspect of it, we just want to make sure that we're very mindful of how we say. I tell healthcare professionals, we have to be really mindful how we say these things to parents. How we're bringing the information to parents, to the patients, because that really messes with the mental. And I can only imagine what you endured growing up, being told what you can't do. That is crazy. RJ, you wanna speak to some of this?
Yeah, like again, it's really difficult in this situation to talk about mental wellness without mentioning like the medical trauma that happens, right? And the things that we're told that we can't do or that can't be done based on our situation. And you're right, Lashade, like how that affects our emotional and social psyche, because it changes how we interact with the world around us. It changes every decision that we make, and it puts us in situations where we may be more vulnerable. And again, it's yet another thing. Like when you think about sickle cell and warriors that are here, it's like, how many people did I know growing up had this? No one talked about it. No one talked about this. And then families didn't talk about this, and families didn't share information because it was like a secret you kept. Something's wrong. Not really. And all of that is trauma, and all of that is hurtful, not only to the family, to the individual, but to our communities. It's very detrimental.
Yeah. Well, Brielle, I heard you say your mom didn't know a lot about trait status. She's a trait carrier. That is true. 87 is the year that mandated sickle cell testing came into play in Michigan. Here in Ohio, it was March of 1990. Juanita, what was it there for you?
I think it was 1983.
Okay. And then in the United States as a whole, 2006 was when every state had to be mandated to do newborn screening. So there's a lot of people uninformed of their diagnosis, unfortunately. You're watching the call, you don't know, ask your primary care provider to run. It's called an electrophoresis. They can run a blood test. It's just a draw of the blood to see what your sickle cell trait status is. But I say all that to say, the 50s, 60s, or the 70s, you had Black Panthers knocking on doors, asking if you wanted to know your sickle cell status. They were given this information. Now we are basically on a hamster. And Juanita, you can tell me if I'm telling a lie here because you're in the field. We're on a hamster wheel recreating the things that they already implemented because it died off. People stopped doing it. People stopped educating. So when we say that we are misinformed, this is why. Because you have people like myself, Juanita, and other sickle cell warriors or parents that became advocates in this field. We're doing all of this legwork, and you know what? God forbid anybody leaves anytime soon. But once we're gone, who's keeping it up?
Exactly. I think about that all the time. And it's sad that our nurses and doctors don't think about, okay, let me put more of this in the curriculum when they're in school. Let them be a little bit more educated on what it is these patients go through. Let them actually have to read a book on what it is someone go through with sickle cell before they can graduate nursing school. It's sad that they go to college and they learn about this much about sickle cell disease, but this much about everything else. So it's like they already misinformed before they even make it to the field because nobody actually told them what it is we really deal with.
Yep.
They just told them what it was, probably what it causes. That was it. Not what it actually is we deal with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say what we deal with, and I have been making it my mission to have panels come with me to the colleges. Because me talking about it, I'm on the parent aspect of it, right? I don't live with sickle cell. I don't know what that is like. So it's kind of like I have to constantly bring people in that are enduring this on a regular basis. They have all of the knowledge. I call sickle cell patients or warriors, I call them the experts because you guys know your body better than the doctor. You know what medications work for you. You know what dose that you need. You are the doctor. You basically teach them how to care for you. So I think my goal is to make sure that we tie in mental health. We have to mention the different pieces that goes into that. As a parent, Brielle, I can only imagine prior to your daughter, gaining her wings, all of the doctor visits, all of the I'm living that part. All of the doctor visits, constant care around, you have to be mindful of everything from the weather to what they wear every day to it is a task. It is a task. And I've only been dealing with this for 8 years. And it's a lot to be a caregiver. I don't think people really understand what that does to your mental. And if you don't have a lot of family support, that can even impact even more. On top of having a child with a diagnosis or being a warrior yourself, someone caring for you, or Juanita, you're married, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a husband, you have kids. On top of and I know you're not your diagnosis, but the fact of the matter is you are battling, or excuse me, you are surviving. I keep saying that you're surviving with sickle cell. So to live with sickle cell, to have to, encompass being a mom, all the things that we have to balance, and each of us on this call are mothers. So just imagine having to balance all of these things on top of your mental health.
Right.
And then we are Black women at that. So then there's a stigma of us having to be strong or to carry all of these things. We can't show any signs of weakness. And I think that is where our community, where we fail. That is where we fail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to chime in and say we don't get to be damsels in distress as Black women. Who's coming to our rescue? Usually it's other Black women, really. It's
Yeah.
other Black women. And so, to think about what you guys are facing and this warrior fight that you have in you, it's a beautiful thing. And I like, one of the tips I have, and one of the things I talk about just with anyone who's dealing with anything medical or anything social or emotional, is like, where are your resources? Who can you turn to?
Yeah.
Right? Who can you turn to within your family, but who's absolutely there outside of your family? What are you engaging in to bring peace? I call it soul feeding. Like, I don't say coping. I feel like our people need stuff that is very soul feeding. We need to feed our souls. What are we doing to feed our souls these days? Because those are the things that will give us hope and help us continue, in the path that we want to be on.
Right.
Yeah. So, Brielle, when you went through your experience, did you have a lot of family support?
Yeah. Immediately, my mom, of course, she's literally the best person I know. She immediately, started coming with me to go down to our sickle cell office to learn about what everything that was going on, what we would have to do over the next couple years. Her dad, her other grandparents, my siblings, as a whole, my family is just, we're super close. So I have a lot of support from them. I can call them at any time and somebody is going to come. I can at least find one person to come. So I think that I had a lot of support from my family. I had a lot of support from his family as well. Once we got the diagnosis and started to, deal with the medication every day, all that stuff, everybody was pretty much hands on and trying to learn so that we could give her the best care possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they understood how serious it was and how important it was, like you said, to just the change of weather, the things that you take for granted when you have a child who is not have sickle cell disease. I don't think that everybody completely understood that or took that into account, but they were all trying to make sure that they knew as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, if they're not living it every day, they're not gonna understand it. Like, if it's not in your household, fully to that extent, because people think that you acting funny. Like, when I say you can't come over here if you got a cold, you gotta wait a couple weeks because their immune system is not as strong as, you know what I mean? Like, I have to really take a lot of things into account. Um, and I just don't think people really understand the the long term effects behind every decision that we make. Juanita, are you trying to come back on? Oh, yeah, I think she froze out. Okay, hold on, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm here. My apologies.
No, you're fine. I just had to take you off the other one. So,
Okay.
basically, what I wanted to ask you was, now that you have two children with sickle cell trait, do you have any concern?
I don't necessarily have lots of concerns. Like, I feel like I probably should educate myself more on how it affects um children as far as like being active, because my son is extremely active. I feel like I could be better with that. My main concern is just, like, I know how me and you got connected with this was like over my Facebook post, like, how are people educating their children? My main concern is that I want them to be so much more prepared than I was. I want them to have a clear understanding of what they have, what that means if they decide to be with a person that has sickle cell trait. Because I will say that's one good thing about my OB. She definitely didn't tell me, like, oh, don't have any more children. She was like, girl, go ahead. Let me show you. She definitely gave me a lot of education, and that is because she was African American, which I will say that it is very important that you have someone who has more information for you. Because, like I was saying before, their pediatrician was in West Bloomfield, because that's where I'm from. So they didn't really know much about it because it don't really affect their people as much. And it's not to
No.
not to say, oh, it's a problem, but like you said, it's a small section. Like Juanita was saying, it's a small section that they learned about that they probably don't really have to address much. So for them, they didn't really know anything. So, my main concern is just making sure that my children understand their diagnosis, having sickle cell trait, and what that means. And I do use their sister a lot to explain to them, or to try and get their wheels turning, because they're at an age where they're soaking up information, they're learning as much as they can. This is the best time to educate, to try and introduce anything, because this is when their brain is collecting as much data and information as possible, and holding on to that. So I try and use her as a way to explain to them, like, oh, okay, this is, this is what she had. You have this, and you could have a child that could be have disease, so that they have a full understanding. And if they do get a diagnosis, or if they do have any issues, they're not lost, because I was lost, and I definitely don't want them feeling that shock, or that feeling of confusion, and like, I have no idea what is going on right now. I don't want them to have that. So that's my main concern, is finding out and figuring out the best way to educate them on their diagnosis and what that could mean for their future.
Yep. Yeah. So I heard a couple things you said. So first thing, there's over 250 different hemoglobinopathies out here that we have to worry about with having sickle cell trait. There's more common ones like, sickle cell trait, C trait, thalassemia trait. There's just a lot. There's a lot of different ones. So when we tell, when you're educating your child or children about trait, there are lots of them. So that make that very clear. There are so many that we can't even count on our hands, toes, and you have to really make that clear to them. But then secondly, you mentioned him being very active. So in sickle cell trait, we have sickle cell trait in the athletes. You want to make sure hydration, 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 hydration. I don't know how many times I can say that. Juanita, I'm not playing. Hydration, because there are sickle cell trait carriers dying from overexertion and dehydration playing sports. So I say all that to say, continue to educate yourself. I can provide you with resources. If you're following this page, I'm always putting resources. Juanita, when I share her information, she's putting resources up. You want to make sure you are using valid and reliable. I have to keep saying that because people put some crazy stuff out here and it's not accurate. You can always use the scdaa.org. That can be your spot there. And then, of course, the cdc.gov. You want to find information that is reliable and credible. You want to make sure these things are valid. But I say all that to say, scuba diving, that's something you have to take into account. Flying high altitudes, there's a lot, that I think people do not even consider with just sickle cell trait. So when we talk about, and I gotta go back to the mental health, all of this plays on our mental health, our overall health. As RJ talked about, earlier when she mentioned the medical grief or medical loss or whatever. All of these things really tie into the sickle cell community. We've had people who were in training for the Army or the Navy, sickle cell trait, they're not, so it's just a lot of things that we really have to take in account with the things that are impacted by Black and Brown communities. A lot of our community, they want to just kind of do away from therapy. I don't think that's me personally. I can say my personal thought on that, and maybe you guys can chime in, especially since you've been through therapy. Everybody needs a therapist, even a therapist to a degree. And
Yes.
to work through some of these things that we're going through, because I am no good, RJ is no good, Brielle is no good, Anita is no good if our own mental health is not in check. How are we able to help other people?
100%. I think that, like you said, a lot of people don't like therapy, but therapy is literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. I can work through so many things and look at things from so many different ways when I went to therapy. And I feel like it was pivotal in me getting through my process of healing from a lot of things, not just loss. But it was so important, and I was able to touch on so many feelings and deal with so many different things. I think a lot of people don't like therapy because they feel like, oh, therapy is this person trying to tell me what to do. And so for me, when I push therapy and finding that person for you, is that all therapists aren't made equally. You may have just found a therapist that just wasn't right for you. And I feel like I've had multiple different therapists, and I can say that my last therapist that I had, she was it for me. She's what I needed. She was able to help me. So I think that I tell people a lot of times, it's okay if you go to your first therapist and you don't like her or him. Try someone else. Keep trying until you find that right person. Because like you said, everybody needs that person or that safe space where they can go and talk and decompress and get their feelings out, and have some type of guidance as well on, like, hey, these feelings are valid. It's okay to feel this way. Why don't you try these methods and see if that can help you get through this or get through that? So it's very important, therapy, and I feel like everybody should go.
Yeah. What's your thought, RJ?
Of course, I agree, and thank you, Brielle, for putting it so beautifully, and eloquently. Therapy is a relationship, and I routinely tell people, if you are sitting across from a therapist and you're not feeling it, break up with them. Break up with them and find another therapist. Especially among our community and our people, we in such physical ways. The grief, the loss, and the trauma is manifested so physically among our people. So when you think about being a carrier of sickle cell, the trait, or being a warrior, and if your mental health is offline and you're unaligned, then it's going to manifest and it's going to create more challenges medically. And so I think, again, that's just another area of discussion, so cute, that we need to focus on, and we need to bring more awareness, and we need to speak on in our communities, just the need.
Yeah.
Because, there's people that are just like, well, I don't need someone new in my business. A good therapist is a walking, talking diary. You know what I mean? And so it's so important to have that other person to bounce those feelings and emotions off of in different ways, and to gain different perspectives and insight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So I kind of want to segue into my Good Health Wins collaboration with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Psi Zeta chapter. And we talk about COVID. Now, Juanita, you tell me, because I know you're I know you are working with one of the foundations. During COVID, or even now, do you think that mental health is something that should be looked at even more because of COVID and sickle cell warriors?
If they battled COVID and it was something that was, kind of detrimental to them, or if they lost someone to COVID, if COVID hit them hard, then yes, definitely. But personally, I battled COVID 3 times, and it didn't really affect me mentally. I feel like I knew we were all going to go through it at some point, right? So we were already mentally preparing ourselves when COVID first started. But when we got it, we were definitely scared for our lives. I mean, I was scared, but my kids, of course, they're kids, so their immune system isn't strong either. So, but we all went through it, and we got through it, and I can say that yes, COVID was a traumatizing time, but not just for sickle cell warriors, but for everybody. It was really for everybody. So it's definitely some people out here that who should really seek counseling after COVID. And I could say our youth, our teenagers more, because with them being, in the house so much and everything that they had to go through, the time that they didn't actually get the education that they needed, and everything that played a part when the world went through COVID, it did put stress and strain on so many people. So yes, I do feel like a lot of people definitely need therapy. They don't understand what it is that they might be going through or feeling, and understanding why life might be so bad is probably because you haven't learned how to express yourself or deal with the things that you have gone through that has traumatized you. So yeah, so some people definitely, therapy is definitely needed. I'm sorry, my
No, you're fine.
so therapy is good. I've tried it once, but I think I more start leaning towards God and my family for help now, because I didn't have a good outcome with therapy. But like Brielle said, it's okay to find another therapist if you're not okay with that one. So I don't want to deter people away from it because it didn't work out for me. But I have a really strong family. Like, we have a strong bond. I have a support system, so I have people to talk to at all times. So I don't really feel the need for me to go. But I feel like it's definitely a lot of people who need it and who don't have that support, who don't have people to talk to and lean on every single day. So
Yeah, yeah, yep. I guess, what I was thinking, so many people have lost. So we're going back to that loss and grief. During COVID, there were so many lives that were lost, unfortunately. Um, I personally, and this is not to shape anyone to do anything they're not interested in. I did get the COVID vaccination, which Good Health Wins is really big on promoting vaccinations for flu and COVID. My entire family did. My husband and my oldest son had caught COVID prior to us doing the vaccinations. And that is kind of what pushed me to do it, because I didn't want my two warriors to catch COVID. That was my fear, especially with their immune system not being the strongest. So everybody in the house is vaccinated now. So I am fortunate enough to say that I had not caught COVID, but knowing people that passed away, I had people that I knew that passed away from COVID, and it's just a really sad situation. And we think about mental health and COVID and the things that has taken place. I know that had to play a huge part in our community as a whole, and not even just sickle cell. We're just talking about our community as a whole. Like I said, so many lives were really impacted by COVID. So I say all that to say is I hope people are still understanding that COVID is still out there. It is real. And you have to, continue to wash your hands, continue to keep yourself safe. Um, we just want to make sure that everybody is keeping that in the forefront. And then more importantly, Juanita, you could probably attest to this. We already were living like this prior to COVID. Anybody with sickle cell was already living sort of in a little bubble where we couldn't have visitors and things like that. Just because we had to, and Brielle, I'm pretty sure at one point you had to experience some of these things too. We just have to keep our kids safe. With just everything that's out there. There's just so many intricate pieces to sickle cell as a whole that I think people just really have not dissected, and they really don't understand. But I felt like COVID was the point where they had a smidget of understanding of what warriors go through every day. So with that being said, RJ, do you have any tips for people to keep their mental health Well, before we start with you, RJ, let me ask our warrior and our warrior mom, what tips do you guys have for people, parents that may be possibly maybe they're dealing with the transition of a child? What will be a piece of advice to see some brightness from that? What would you provide with that, Brielle?
I definitely just say like have an open conversation. I know a lot of times when you're dealing with things in your life, it's easier to like get in your shell and just be like, oh, I'm gonna deal with this on my own. But being able to have open conversation, whether that's with your family or a therapist. I know for me, like that's what helped me the most. Is like finally getting to the point where it's like, okay, let me talk about the things that I'm feeling to somebody, even if it's, not a professional. Let me just talk to someone and finding people who also share some of the same things that you're going through. It's nothing like getting a hug from someone who honestly understands how you feel. Because I think a lot of times when you go through certain situations, it's like, oh, you feel like nobody else knows how you feel. I know that's how I felt as a young mother and losing a child. It was just like, who know how I feel? Like everybody's telling me sorry and everyone's, saying, oh, it'll be okay. And it's like, but y'all don't understand how I'm feeling right now. So finding a person that also, may be having the same, going through the same emotions as you, leaning on them as a person to work through whatever you're feeling is always a bonus as well.
Yeah. Um, Thank you for that. So, Juanita, I have a question for you. What advice would you give? Maybe they don't have maybe the warrior doesn't have a supportive family, or they may not have a husband, but they're dealing with a crisis and they're dealing with their mental health. Be that you are a warrior. What advice would you have for them if they're battling, their mental health, as well as a crisis?
Um, well, I would tell them, that you are not alone, no matter how alone you do feel, and it's always ways to cope, even though you may not have people. There's times when I found myself writing stories to myself, personal journals about what it is that I was going through, and I feel like that would help me just get through that moment. I didn't have to share with anybody, but I got how I was feeling out, you know that, and also just finding things to take your mind off of what it is you're going through really helps. Find just knowing that I don't have to lay here and just let sickle cell win. I can find things that's going to help me cope, help me get through what it is I'm going through, because I didn't always have, I didn't always feel supported. And there was times when I would, be by myself just crying and not understanding. And just one day at a time. You just have to take it one day at a time. You have to know, you just have to have that hope. Like you said, having hope is the most important thing. And I know everybody don't believe in God, and I don't want to put God on people, but prayer really does help. So praying and just getting close to God, He will make you feel at ease at times when you just can't deal, like when you're just really in that pain crisis and you losing your mind, He is really somebody that you can go to. And it's sometimes that's the hardest time to pray, when you're in a crisis. Like you get mad, but I'm telling you, when we're able to get back to that positive moment, and sickle cell crisis is not that bad to get through once you get, find something that's going to help you cope. So I still have my moments. Like as soon as I get into a sickle cell crisis, I think I'm gonna be okay still with it. But then I find myself crying like a baby and just angry, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta get myself back out of that, because if not, I'll stay there for a long time, and that depression will start hitting, you know. So you can't let it beat you down for too long. You have to find something to get you back, So I really would just tell them, just stay positive, because if you don't stay positive, then negativity is what you will get.
Absolutely. I like that.
Mhm.
Thank you. So
You're welcome.
now, RJ, provide us some of the tips that you have.
Yeah, I mean, you ladies listed some beautiful, wonderful things, like amazing things, and obviously all of them are correct. I think what I would add to that is having an understanding and an insight that what you're facing and what you're worrying through is multi-layered, right? We talked about, even just on this call, like how many different hats you have to wear and how many different ways you have to protect yourself and how many different systems you have to navigate, knowing that you are a warrior with this, or a warrior mom with this. Um, and then I also like to encourage people to not reject negative emotions just because they're seen as negative. Crying and sadness are normal reactions of grief and loss. And we really should embrace and accept that I'm crying about this because I'm hurt and because I'm sad and because I can't control it, and I don't know what it means for tomorrow or 10 years from now. And so that those tears and that hurt, those are normal. And I encourage people to not reject that. Juanita, you said it wonderfully, like I'm a sit with this, but then I got to decide when I'm going to move through it, because otherwise I'll sit there for a long time. So that education piece that you guys mentioned, like being able to educate yourself and diving into things that you love, again, to feed your soul. I can list 100 things, but I think it's important to explore for ourselves those things that we love, those things that are going to be remediating for what we're dealing with and for what we're facing.
Yes, yes. I am so happy you ladies came on tonight. Just sharing your experience. I'm pretty sure you're going to impact somebody that's watching tonight. You just don't know, but I'm pretty sure y'all impacted somebody tonight. So if you are watching and you would like to have a connection with these ladies, let me go ahead and put their following so you can follow. If you want to schedule a therapy session with Royanne Johnson, you can go to royanne-johnson.clientsecure.me, and then you can follow Brielle Bow at Brielle Bow. Her name. You got Juanita McClain. You can follow her at Juanita Sickle Cell Awareness. Like I said, these ladies, they bring a lot of value to just our community in general. Like I said, this is the Let's Talk Sickle Cell series, but more importantly, anybody that's watching can learn something from these different series that we have been hosting for the last couple months. There's so much knowledge and so much, education in these sessions. So if you hadn't watched, you can go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, Scott Center OH, and you can go back and replay any of them all the way back to March, because that's when we started these series, and they have been amazing. I've had some great people come on and just provide us with some knowledge that we needed. So with that being said, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. May 24th, we will have two amazing social workers come on, Elijah Jones and Jasmine Pope. They're going to provide self-care tips, and they're going to talk about the stigma of mental health, his and hers perspectives. That's going to be a really good session. And it's not tied to sickle cell, but it's still the Let's Talk Sickle Cell series. It's just more so just giving more information on that. So once again, you can follow our panelists at their respective follows that we have right here on the banner. And if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. You guys do not want to miss out. You do not want to miss. Thank you again, ladies. You have a wonderful night. I appreciate your time. Share with your family and friends this link. Like I said, as long as we impact one life today, I'm fine with it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, ladies.
No
Same,
problem.
thank you. It was wonderful. Nice to meet you, ladies.
Nice meeting you
It's nice to
too.
meet you as well. Pick somebody else on to say bye.
All right, little man. I have a question. Is that the baby you were pregnant with during COVID?
It is. Yes, this is the COVID baby. That's why I was so scared during COVID. I took like a whole year off of work after I had him. I said, I'm not going to nobody's job giving my baby COVID. But he's 2 now. So he'll be 3.
Well, everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bye.